Welcome to the Officer Autumn podcast, the only podcast designed specifically for female cops in mind. I hope you enjoy this podcast episode. Bridget, I'm so excited to have you on this podcast. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Bridget Truxillo. I am an attorney. Before that, I was a deputy sheriff in Florida. I currently live in Houston, Texas. I'm actually kind of from all over the South, which is a whole episode. But I've been an attorney for a long time. But when I was at the sheriff's office, I was sergeant patrol like everybody. I quickly went to the undercover narcotics unit. And then shortly after that, I got onto the SWAT team. And then I did both of those pretty much until the end that I left. When I very quickly decided I was changing the whole trajectory of my professional life and decided to go to law school instead of doing law enforcement for the rest of my life. But now I have a business. I did law firm life for a long time. I did litigation, still do some of that. So 14 years in, 14 plus. But I started a company called Protective Wellness a little over a year ago because what I've always wanted to do, and you'll hear my story throughout this podcast, but in spite of everything that happened in law enforcement, it's still very important to me to give back to law enforcement because I know what the job does to you, especially as a female. And I know that I can help, whether it's through the legal information or advice or representation that I can give because I know the world that you live in, or through wellness training. So Protective Wellness provides wellness training and legal support. And then we can talk a little bit more about what that means, but that's me. That's who I am and what I do. Oh, and I'm a mom of 3 kids and I'm married. So
Bridget, what kind of law do you practice now?
Now I specialize in representing law enforcement and the issues that they have. Most often that is issues surrounding workers' comp, but harassment and discrimination, retaliation. And what I mean by representing is I get questions from people across the country, and I can help even if I'm not the person that files your lawsuit or helps you file your complaint. But I think particularly for women, because I was in a position where I felt like I created a business that I wish was available to me when I was doing what I was doing, because there were so many times I felt alone and picked on and singled out and highlighted and spotlighted and kicked and whatever, spit at, that I just want to help in all the ways I know that law enforcement officers, particularly female law enforcement officers, need it. So I provide advice on an array of topics. A lot of times it's harassment, retaliation, discrimination. But for 13 years, I did asbestos litigation. So I did a lot of litigation work. And if you would have told me when I was a cop that I was going to become an attorney and do asbestos litigation, I would have said, I don't know about the lawyer part, but what is asbestos? Like, I didn't even know what it was. And then I just got a job, and then I just kept trying to leave it. Like 3 times I quit the law firm world, and it was like, I hated the law firm world. I liked being able to help the families I was helping. But nobody survives mesothelioma. So you deal with every client died, which I think also law enforcement prepared me for that. But yeah, so I've done civil litigation basically for 14 years. I've never done anything criminal, certainly didn't do criminal defense. I always said from the get-go that I never wanted to help get the bad guys off. Certainly didn't want to try and make the cops look bad. So I was never interested in that.
Well, thank God you're in full integrity.
Yes. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard of Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. No. The character in that book is Henry, I think it's Henry Rourke. And I read that book in my early 20s. And this guy lives by like the utmost level of integrity. He was an architect, and he only wanted to design specific types of buildings. And he got this super high paying job, and he would not do it. So he walked away from his career and went and worked in a stone quarry, like backbreaking, nothing to do with, he's like, if I can't be an architect the way I want to be, I won't do it at all. It's like, that really stuck with me. Like a super high level of integrity, and stick with it. I mean, I'm not going to go work in a quarry or anything at this point, but thank you for saying that, because integrity is very important to me.
Huge. So tell us, let's talk about your career, dude. You said you were on SWAT. Like, we need to talk about this.
Yeah. Yes, I was. And for a long time, I didn't even like to talk about it. I went into law enforcement, obviously, because I wanted to help, like everybody wants to, and not to downplay that. It's not like, but I did. Nobody in my family has ever been in law enforcement before. So they thought it was a little bit crazy. I wanted a job I knew that would require me to be fit, because I was already into fitness. And then I got into patrol and realized that all those donut eating stories are true. And so many cops are just in such bad shape. And then I wanted to go to like federal law enforcement somehow. So that was what got me to the local level. And because I wanted to get the experience so that I could apply. Because I went to college, graduated from the University of Florida. The very next week, I started the police academy at the sheriff's office so that I could one day apply for federal law enforcement. Realized most people in patrol are super lazy. Me, as soon as I could, tried for the narcotics unit, because I also thought that would look good for me to apply to something like the DEA. And I just thought much more active and, TV-like, which sounds silly. That's not really why I did it.
No, I hear
you. And then a SWAT team came up, and I didn't go into law enforcement thinking that I would try out for SWAT team, but they had a spot, and I figured I could do it. So it's funny that, and I've told this story on other podcasts, but one of the guys that I'd gone to police academy with, because this was it. I mean, I started at the sheriff's office in I think September, October, and by the next November, I was on the narcotics unit and at the same time trying out for SWAT team. And so it'd been a year from the police academy, and one of the guys had gone to, like, I worked for the sheriff and he went for one of the cities within my county. So we were friendly. And he found out somehow that obviously me trying out for SWAT sort of made the local news, not really the news, but like the gossip. And he found out, and he literally called me and said, I heard you trying out for SWAT team. And I was like, yeah. He goes, you really think he said, you really think that's a good idea?
Of course he said that. Of course.
And I said, well, I guess now we're not friends. And of course I did it. Like, what are you talking? Like, you just sealed the deal, buddy. I mean, why wouldn't I do it? Well, you really think it's a good idea? Why? What does it even mean?
Bridget, this makes me want to go off on a soapbox for just a second, because, here's the deal. People don't understand. I feel like men don't understand what they're saying to us. Do you know what I'm saying?
But no, there's been times where I have said, do you hear yourself right now?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I think I've for sure said that out loud. I know I've said that out loud. I can tell you another 3 stories that happened when I left the SWAT team that I literally said out loud, do you hear yourself?
Yeah.
Like, good Lord. Yeah.
Because I don't know. I don't think, sometimes I don't understand. I'm like, what did you just say to me? There's been so many times in my career. I'm like, even today, like, what the fuck did you just say to me? Like,
yeah.
What? Listen, at the end of the day, and I say this, and I do need to make it on my own app. I better write this shit down. I have got to talk about this. Here's why I love this conversation with you. And we're going to talk more about it. But if a woman can do exactly the requirements for the fucking job, she fits it. Why are we shitting on her? We're not. Listen, here's the deal. I'm not fucking asking for, in fact, I think that male and female requirements need to go away. Let's just make the requirements. That's how I feel. Make their requirements. If I want to do a position, if I want to get into law enforcement, whatever, I will make sure that I can hit everything. Right. So we're not asking for, special treatment, a side door, any of that shit. But if we can earn it, give it to us. Let us earn it. Let us just have it.
I literally said to my SWAT commander one time when I had just had enough, that I went into his office and said, I'm not asking for better treatment. I'm just asking for equal treatment. And he said to me, don't make trouble for yourself where there's not any.
See?
And I was like, dude, there's already trouble.
This makes me want to fucking jump through the fucking roof.
I know. I literally said that. I don't want special treatment. I did the same SWAT tryout all the guys did. There was about, I don't remember, it was 4 or 5 of us trying out at the same time, maybe 6, I don't remember. But the whole team had to do the run that we did. I did the same rappelling they did, the same shooting they did. I had to drag the same dummy that they had to do. Well, I dragged it. Some of them picked them up, but who gives a shit? As long as I get the dummy in the van, I saved that dummy's life. But I didn't have any separate standards. So then why are you holding me to a different standard? And it's never going to not be that way. Unfortunately, I think progress has been made very slightly.
And in some different departments, right? Because I have had
Right.
women reach out to me and be like, hey, Autumn, like, I love what you're doing, but my department's fucking cool.
Yeah.
Yes. Fuck yeah. But that is not
Not all
that's
of them.
not the story for
No.
the majority of police departments.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
let's talk about that. So like you got into SWAT, like how was that? Like how was it for you? Like what was the process? Like explain that to me.
Yeah, I mean, put your name on the list. I can't even remember if I had to get like approval for it, but some agencies you can't apply to any specialized unit unless you've been there for a long time. But I mean, I got on the narcotics unit; they had no female, so duh, you need a female buying drugs. Chicks can buy drugs so much quicker and easier, especially. I mean, if you're a white male, everybody's just going to assume you're a cop. No offense, and I'm not being racist. I'm just saying, like, I'm a white chick, and I got way more crack than like they always would prefer me to buy it instead of them because they just didn't assume I was a cop, even though that stupid saying, like, you're a cop, you have to tell me if you ask. Like, no, dumbass. Like, you're so dumb. That's why you're selling dope. Anyway, so I had the tryout. I mean, we started it and the sun wasn't up yet. So it was before the sun came up. We did the run. I had no problem with the run. And then we drove somewhere. I know, like I said, we had to do rappelling. We had to do an interview. We had to do shooting. The only bad part is the shooting they put towards the end of the day. So after we had already done the run and the obstacle course, which they talk about the dummy, it was challenging obstacle course. Not to mention that my nerves, I knew I was the only female. I mean, we were lined up 2 by 2 in a line. It's dark, getting ready to start the run. And the SWAT commander at the time, it changed right after I made the team. My maiden name is Baragona. And so this is before I was married or had kids. We were getting ready to start. Everybody lined up, waiting to go. And he goes, Baragona, you're making history, girl. One way or the other, you're making history. So just starting the day, like, holy shit, let's just go. Let's just go.
No pressure.
So, we do all this stuff. And I think the second to last thing we did was shooting, but this was after the obstacle course, the rappelling, the running, and then we shot. And that was the part that probably made me the most nervous, just because I was spent, And then we had an interview with a room full of SWAT guys. And I remember that one of the things they asked you is, what's your plan? And I am an open book. I've always been an open book. I would never have been, will never be a good poker player. And one of the things I asked is, what are your plans? And I said, well, I'd like to go to federal law enforcement someday. And they said, like, how long would you, what do you want, what's your time frame? I was like, well, I don't control that, but 3 to 5 years would be nice. And then one of the guys told me later, he's like, you never should have said that. That was so dumb. Like, no, why would they invest all this time and money in you and put you on the team just for you to leave? And I'm like, because all of you are lying. If you say you wouldn't take, 4 or 5 of the guys that I worked with left and went to federal law enforcement or state law enforcement. And that's just me being super freaking honest. And so it took them about 3 months to put me on the team. They had two guys, I think 2 guys got in trouble or something. And so it just took them, I think immediately they filled one. Long story short is I got put on the team in January, but then come to find out later, because my SWAT captain told me on 3 separate occasions, explicitly, verbatim, he said, the only reason you're on this team is because the captain made me put you on.
That's bullshit.
The 3rd time he said that to me, this was after, keeping in mind that we had already competed in the SWAT Roundup. Like, SWAT Roundup International, look it up. It's called Florida SWAT Roundup International. It's in Orlando, just outside of Orlando. They still have it. It's super amazing. I had to try out within my own team to make the SWAT Roundup competition team, which I did make it. And then we went to SWAT Roundup, where they have roughly 75 teams. Each team has 6 people on it. And the first year I went, there were 3 females total. The second year I went, it was 2 females total, meaning there's only one of them besides me the second year. And one of the events is an obstacle course that I've seen grown men throw up on. And the second year we went, our team placed in the top 10 of this obstacle course, and with
Wow.
me on the team. And so this is after we've competed and all this stuff. I can prove to them that physically I'm capable. I can shoot. I can do all these things. And my captain and I are SWAT captain. He's a lieutenant, but anyway, we were in the gym. The only two people in the gym at the sheriff's office. So obviously we're dedicated individuals. And something came up and he says, yeah, well, you know, he told me again, the only reason you're on the team is because the captain made me put you on. And I stopped what I was doing. I turned around and looked at him and I said, Lieutenant, I heard you the first two times. And I refused to like walk out. I finished my workout and then left the room. And I'm just like, mother, I mean, just what's the point? Like, I heard you. If you want me to quit, I haven't quit. And eventually I did. Because and then the story after that, which I could tell, but
yeah, we want to hear it.
Well, so I was also on the SWAT team at the narcotics unit at the same time. Like I said, the narcotics unit, anytime we got a search warrant, the SWAT team would execute the search warrant. So some agencies, they're big enough where their narcotics unit get that type of training, but those are very dangerous situations, as you know, obviously. So whenever we would get a search warrant, the SWAT team would execute the search warrant, break down the door, secure the scene, and then once it was all secure, SWAT would leave and the narcotics unit would come in. And really what that meant is three of us would switch hats. We had a small narcotics unit. This particular search warrant, I did the buys myself. So I did the undercover buys, buying cocaine in this guy's house with a rifle sitting right next to him every time. In my county, we had to have 3 buys before we could get a search warrant. And so I did that, did all the buys, wrote the search warrant, got the state attorney to approve it, got the judge to sign it. So it's all legit. And now it's SWAT team time. And, you know, by this time, like we had what I call like the assault vehicle that the entry team would ride on. And then behind that would be the equipment van. And it's like the what I call the bread van. I only ever got to drive the bread van, the equipment van. They never let me do anything in the assault vehicle. And so we executed the search warrant, and you know, again, it was my search warrant, and I did the SWAT team thing. And then as soon as the SWAT team secured, but I didn't get to do it, I just sat in the equipment van, waiting to see if they needed anything. And even though I did the same training they did, a couple weeks later, I guess, the state attorneys that we worked with a lot to get our narcotics stuff invited 2 or 3 of us to a party they were having. And we were at this party, and one of the guys, I still remember, his name's Brian Gaynor, we're there. Ex-Marine, like total jarhead, like neck was the same size as his head, but good, decent guy, tells me that on the way to that search warrant, so there's a backstory to this, which I can tell you, but on the way to that search warrant, that the entire SWAT team was calling me a rat and a snitch behind my back. And my jaw hit the floor. So the backstory to that is, you know, I got called out on everything. Every single mistake I made, they wrote me up. Everything. And for the longest time, I just thought, oh, you're right. I made a mistake. It's okay. I'll do better. Oh, you're right. You're right. I made a mistake. I'll do better. Oh yeah. You're right. I didn't lock that door on that van that's in a secure compound, but you're right. I forgot to lock that one door, and it's a secure compound, but go ahead, write me up, put a letter in my file, give me 3 months probation, whatever. Make me do 500 mountain climbers. And one time this was early 2000s, so not that long after Columbine, where all agencies were doing active shooter training in a school. If you remember or maybe people on this listening to this are too young, but one of the things about Columbine high school shooting is that at the time you wouldn't make entry. You would wait for the tactical team to show up in a school shooting so that they could handle the shooter. Well, what ended up happening is that people in that school ended up bleeding out and dying. When they'd gone in, they could have potentially saved lives. And so we used to train that all the time, active shooter. I mean, our whole department did train so that you could prevent something like happening again. So it was the summertime. We were at this high school in the hood, training for active shooters. So there was nobody else on the campus, but it was in the hood. And I come out, we're on a break, and I'm one of the first people out of the school into the parking lot. And my sergeant, who used to just eat my shit up all the time, I mean, anything that he could tear me up for, he did. And he's a team leader on SWAT, so he has even more gear than I do. I mean, flashbangs, maybe even some grenades, Benelli shotgun, probably an automatic AR, all kind of ammunition. I come out, his windows down, his trunk is open, and I think his door might have, but I remember for sure the window was down, but his trunk was wide open. There were all his gear, all his I literally stood there. I don't know if you showed the video on this, but like I literally stood there with my mouth wide open, and I like looked around me like, does anybody else see this? I don't remember if anybody else was there, but like one of the guys came out, and I didn't say anything. I didn't go like, hey, Sarge, asshole, go close up your car. No, I didn't do that. I just let it be. Didn't say anything. And I just waited to see if something would happen. Like, it's still, if I really talk about it, it can get my hand shaking. Because I was so like, you have got to be kidding me.
Right.
Nobody said a thing to him. He didn't get written up. No, they would have tried to fire me if they could have over that. And I don't know, remember how long it took, but not that long after, I was like, that's it. I went into my SWAT lead. Now, the lieutenant of narcotics was also the SWAT commander. So I went into his office and said, that's when I told him, I said, look, I'm not asking for better treatment. I'm just asking for equal treatment. He's like, what do you mean? And I was like, I'm not saying who it is, but we came out of that training the other day, and there was one of the guys had his car wide open. I didn't even say who it was. And he's like, who was it? I was like, no, I'm not going to tell you who it was. I'm just going to say that if that had been me, you guys would have torn me up. And he said, don't make trouble for yourself where there's not any. And he said it twice. And finally I was like, I don't really know what you're even talking about, because I already live in trouble. And then 2 weeks later, well, I can't remember exactly, maybe a week or so later, I did the search warrant. A week or so after that, I found out they were all calling me a snitch behind my back because I went and told my captain I just wanted equal treatment. I mean, a month before that, I got in trouble for not setting up an undercover narcotics vehicle, like one of our cars that we could set up to do buys. And I was supposed to set it up before I went home. And I was really, really sick. Sick. And I went to the doctor the first thing in the morning so I could get to the office and have my like my antibiotics and all this other shit. And I didn't get the car set up ahead of time, but I still went to work, even though I could have called in sick. This is way before COVID, where people would be like, God, stay home.
Yeah.
And I got written up for that. I got written up for not having the car ready. And so it's also punishment. They made me drive. We got off at like midnight that night. They made me drive an RV to a car wash to wash it. I'd never driven an RV before, and I've certainly never washed an RV, but I'm going to tell you right now, it takes a long time. And I'd never driven an RV before. So as I was driving out of our compound, I nicked the taillight, and I broke off a piece of the taillight. I get to work the next day. They wrote me up for a crash. And so not only did you not tell me I was going to get written up, it was just in my file. Well, of course, the captains all see crash reports, because that's a high liability. And this is the same captain that made them put me on the SWAT team. And I know that he had started telling them, like, you guys need to ease off a little bit. Like, this is becoming a little too obvious that you're picking on somebody.
Yeah.
And he got the crash report, and he called me in the office, and he's like, do you want to talk about this? And I was like, no. At the time, I was like, no, I don't want to talk about it. He's like, why? I said, because I just want to, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to be that girl, I would say. I want to be respected as an operator. I want to be respected as a dependable officer. I don't want to be the girl that complained or filed a report. Now, looking back on it,
yep,
I should have filed a report for discriminatory treatment. But and so, like, I got the crash report. My sergeant made an error that I would have gotten eaten up alive for. My SWAT commander told him all I was being a rat. I found out all that happened, and then so my captain called, maybe 3 or 4 weeks after he called me and said, you want to talk about it? I walked in his office and I said, that's it. I want off SWAT. I want off patrol. I'm done. Like, I want off of it. I want you to put me on days. I'm not working nights anymore. And I want it to happen next week. And he said, okay, you got it.
Wow.
Because he knew. And then at that time, I already knew I was going to be going to law school. So they could just shove it up their stupid asses. But I don't think they're stupid. It was just maybe a little bit. But
Bridget, what would you give for advice for any woman that's going through something similar? Because your story, while it sucks, it's not, unfortunately, I wouldn't say it's rare.
Right. It's not.
No.
And that's what I think is so great about anybody that's in your community and the people that are the females listening to this podcast, or anybody who feels discriminated against. But for sure, I just know what that's like as a female, is number one, write it down. or email yourself, or email it to somebody so you have a timestamped story. Like as soon as you start to think, wait a second, this is a lot. This is a little too much. You're right. You should pay attention to your intuition, and you need to start writing that down. But I just say, like in the electronic world we have now, you can never really erase an electronic record, or it's very difficult to do so. So that's why I say email it to somebody, or text it to somebody, or something where you're making an electronic file of it and you're creating your story. Because if you do want to make a complaint, and then this is the attorney coming out of me, is you can pull up this record and you're not having to try and remember it. What I would say is I should have said to my lieutenant, that's enough. Like, I get it, and it's enough. I'm respectfully requesting you to stop saying that, to not say this kind of stuff to me anymore. Or when I went into his office to say, with all due respect, I'm requesting that the treatment be fair, and not really say or else, but you're like saying, like, I want to put you on notice that I'm recognizing this treatment is not equal. It's not fair. It's not the way it's supposed to be. It won't, it shouldn't continue. So I'm making you aware that I'm aware of it, and then I sort of put that on notice. I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have put my lieutenant and my sergeant on notice, saying, enough's enough. I've tried to prove to you I can do my job. I realize that's not going to matter. So I'm putting you on notice that this treatment needs to be equal for everyone.
So let me ask you this. What are some indicators that it's not equal? Like, okay, because there are times we just need to be honest. We're going to call a spade because I'm not looking to, be any kind of sexist or any kind of one way, right? So there are times where men and women, but we're going to talk about the women, we can be a little fucking sensitive. Okay. So straight up, right? Like, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you there haven't been times where I'm like, oh, they're singling me out. And then I get like less emotional, and I'm like, no, they're not. I'm being fucking really emotional about it right now. Like, calm the fuck down. When is it a problem, Bridget? Like, what are indicators? It's not that I want to be on the lookout for, but it's like, if this is occurring, then we know that it's like not, it's on purpose. Does that make sense?
Yes. So one of the things that I dealt with at the time, which I said earlier, is that, like, I would say, oh, I made a mistake. They're right. I made a mistake. Are you supposed to leave a door unlocked on the SWAT van that has all the gear, like flashbangs and grenades and extra ammo rounds in there? No, you're not. So did I make a mistake? Yes. And yet they have to implement their policies the same across the board. They can't decide to only enforce their policies against one and not another. And the red flags that you look for, I promise I'm not really, I know how to speak. Okay. The red flags that you look for are the things that you start to recognize. It's not, you're going to know it. You're going to see that this is not being applied equally. And whether that's because you're a female or not, you don't have to just, it doesn't have to be that. I think that whether you are having an emotional response to it or not, that regardless, when you calm down, because we always do, is that you're going to know this is not fair. And I don't necessarily like the word fair, but for lack of a better word, to say this is not how everybody's being treated, even if you've actually made a mistake, even if something where you violated some type of policy somewhere. But are they applying that the same to everyone across the board? And I'm sure you will see that that's not the case. You're going to know. You're going to have a feeling, or go ahead and, like I say, write it down, and then just start to see, like, it's not that you're looking for other people's mistakes, but then you'll start to see, like, wait, that was a mistake. Look around and see what happens. And also is that you're not supposed to know when people get in trouble, because that's supposed to be something that just goes into their file and it's not supposed to be talked about. But we all know that stuff is talked about. Mm-hmm. And so you will know. I just think it's that the red flag you look for are the things that you're going to know, and just don't ignore your intuition on it. Is I wish I would have stood up for myself, in the sense of saying, Captain, this is not being done equally. It's supposed to be. And you can just leave it at that. Mm-hmm. You don't have to explain yourself. Certainly don't say, I'm sorry, but let me tell you so-and-so. No, don't say it. You're not sorry for asking for equal treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And don't beat yourself up too much when you do make a mistake. We all make mistakes. Now, I'm not saying like accidentally shooting somebody. I mean, that's an issue.
Right.
I'm talking about if you forgot to lock something, or you messed up a report, or you were late to something, or the little things that they turn into a big, gigantic deal.
Like swearing in your cruiser when you're all by yourself, but your camera's on, but you say the F word just like every other officer. But I happened to get written up for that because my sergeant had a hair across his ass about me. Yeah, like that. But nobody else gets written up for it. Right. Like,
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep. I mean, that's a perfect example. I mean, anybody listening, if you've known any cop ever that has never cussed, please email me or Autumn and let us know so that we can figure this out. That's like a unicorn. As soon as you see a unicorn, please let me know. Or a flying pig. One of those. Those three. A cop that doesn't cuss, a unicorn, or a flying pig.
Let us know.
Yeah, because that doesn't exist. And when you know something's happening, and in one sense, especially if you're still rather new, you'll be thinking, oh, you're right, I made a mistake. Oh my gosh, I want to fix it. I want them to respect me. I want to do a good job. But then pretty quickly you'll start to think, wait a second. Like, I'm not perfect, and neither are you. So it's important that you say something about that. And I'm going to tell you, I didn't do it. I wish I would have. And having a group like this that you have, Autumn, and the community, I think is so important because it gives people hearing these kind of stories. I mean, there are women out there who've been through these things that are taking action on these things that can help you. That didn't exist for me at the time. I didn't know who to turn to. I didn't know who to ask for anything. I didn't trust anybody. Like even my union, it was one of the, no offense, anybody of the guys listening, but he was just one of the guys. And I was at a relatively small department. So there was no way to get away from what they were going to say about me anyway. And so it's having a community like this of people that you can lean on that will give you the encouragement to stand up for yourself, because I want you to stay in this job. And there are going to be times you need to stand up for yourself, and please stand up for yourself, because it's not like you're going to look back one day and say, oh, I'm worthless. I didn't have the courage to do that. No, but I am saying that you will have your own self-respect. I still respect myself, even though I didn't do that. Because I think, I'm freaking SWAT. Like, I respect the heck out of myself. Right. But even if you're not on SWAT, I just think you will regret not saying something later. Because I promise you, and I've heard you say this before, Autumn, that it will not get better because you don't say something. Yeah. Because you keep your mouth shut. They're just going to keep doing it. I've heard you say it. You have to be able to push back at some point. You have to, at some point, say, enough is enough. I hear you. You shouldn't be saying these things. And for now, we can just leave it at that. And then they do it again, say, okay, you shouldn't be saying these things. And then take it whatever level, go to your HR, go to the higher ups, whatever, and go to the next step. Reach out to me and I'll help you figure out what the next step is.
Yeah. And I like what you're saying too. We need to document. I've talked a lot about that, but I think it's important, obviously coming from someone like you've been through what you've been through, but also, who's now an attorney who helps people with this. I think it's important. I just also want to highlight too, though, that the thing is we are having a very real and honest conversation, but again, we're not sitting here like, okay, here's how you find out if you're being mistreated. Like, also, please understand, anybody who's listening to this, like, I don't think that every female cop is being mistreated. You just need to understand that. And It is very triggering for a lot of men and women, but a lot more men are very triggered by what I have to say about all of this, and would be highly triggered off of this conversation because you don't understand what it's like. You may think that, oh, here we fucking go. They're just looking for ways to sue their department. They're just looking for ways to fucking whatever. And the answer is no. It's just, this is not talked about. This is literally a taboo conversation because for the entire birth of police work and women getting into police work, like, it has been swept under the rug. And we clearly, and me being, this is my podcast, like I just feel like we need to talk about it. And again, as a woman, we know the job, we know the career we're getting into, that I push equality. There is a balance to all of this. Like I said, don't be a drama queen. We can all be drama queens. We do get in this job. Guys are going to bust our balls. You have got to be able to take that. But there is an extreme difference from being treated like one of the guys to being, from it getting where. So Bridget, what we talked about as we wrap up this, I want you to be thinking about what you want to leave the women with who are listening to this. But what I want our listeners to know is that Bridget and I talked about having her come in. She's going to come and teach a class inside the Lady Sheepdog Club. If you guys are not familiar with the Lady Sheepdog Club, it is a paid community. There are hours and hours of training talking about how to get you into the job, how to get you through the job, how to survive the job, how to, go to the next level, resiliency, mindset, mental health. I mean, all of the things. There's a sisterhood in there that is, it's very close niche. It's tight. The girls know each other. They talk all the time. And every month that we bring in an expert, we get on a call together. You get to see who's in. It's not, you get to see who's in the group. It's not just a bunch of social media names, screen names and shit, which is really nice. And Bridget's going to come in. She's going to teach a class. Also, Bridget's going to do some live Q&As with me inside of the Facebook group, Officer Autumn's Female Cops. That is free. But again, so you can come in. The Lady Sheepdog Club is obviously a lot more in depth. So love to have you in either one of those. Bridget, what do you want to leave our listeners with?
I think the main thing that I would say, and this is what I focus my business on, is I know you are not going to change these things happen. And you are not going to change, no more than you can change what the job of law enforcement is. You're going to see hard, awful, aggravating things as a law enforcement officer, and you're going to deal with difficult and challenging situations in your job. And if you're not right now, that is fantastic, but be prepared for that to change, because supervisors change all the time, get promoted, get transferred. You could change departments where one is great, and then you go to the next one and it's the exact opposite. You can't change that. And at the end of the day, while you can change your job and you can do something about it, but you can also be doing a lot to take care of yourself. And so do the work on making sure that you know who you are, and making sure that you're always reminding yourselves that at the end of the day, and now this is a whole separate topic, is there are other departments, there are other jobs. At the end of the day, you are more than being a cop. So while this is going to be hard and challenging to deal with things like this, like what I dealt with SWAT, but I wish I would have also focused on that more when I was on SWAT, is that I'm so much more than SWAT, is that there's so much more to me in my life. And then had I been able to recognize, and it's really hard when you're so emotionally tagged into it, but that there's so much more to you. You're still great, valuable, dependable, and a good officer, operator, whatever. But there's so much more to you than that. And if you can remind yourself, but you have to actively do the work for that. That doesn't just happen. I mean, I was working out all the time. I, take care of myself, and that wasn't enough. But I wish I had been doing more, whether it was from hearing it through a group like this, to constantly be reminded that I'm so much more than a SWAT operator. I'm so much more than a deputy, because that would have helped just kind of put that in its place. And while it was aggravating, it would have eventually gone away, or I would have gotten promoted or done whatever. And I'm not saying I regret leaving, because I'm happy what I'm able to offer now. But do the work to make sure you're still happy, which also helps you deal with that in a much better, balanced way.
I love it. Huge. Always, we're so much more than this job. And I say it all the time. And I just, it's the key to everything. It's literally the key to surviving this fucking job. When you understand it's just a job, it's not who you are, right?
Right. I think that's hard. And I don't think everybody likes to hear that, because the job of law enforcement is so unique. But at the end of the day, it's still just a job.
That's it. Bridget, how do the people find you?
My website is the best place. So it's myprotectivewellness.com. And if you go there, you can find links to all the social stuff. You can also sign up for my newsletter. So I really would love everybody to sign up for my newsletter, because I have some cool courses coming out. shortly after I think this episode releases, I'll have a cool course coming out called Wellness Basic Training. And then I also will be giving out and putting out a lot of like just free legal information, because I want to help. And if you're on the newsletter, you'll get notice of that. So sign up for the newsletter and then follow me on all the socials. But go to the website, myprotectivewellness.com is where you find that.
Thank you so much for being here today. I'm excited to have you in the
Thank you.
Lady Sheepdog Club. I'm excited to have you on inside of the Facebook group. It's going to be awesome.
Yep.
To our listeners.
Thank you. Keep doing what
Yes.
you're doing, Autumn. It's amazing work. And I said it, I wish this would have been around when I was on SWAT. It would have been amazing. This is such an important group. And I agree with you. We're not male bashing. We're just acknowledging that there's some differences.
That's it. There's a problem. Ladies, I'll see you next time.